All right. Yeah, we're back with another jersey swap. We're starting to get that familiar feeling back. It's feeling really good. That swag in our step, the 1-0 win that we had against New York Red Bulls really showed it off. But we're not the only ones on a winning streak to start the season. I have with me El Parcero Philly, my good friend JP Zapata, up there with the Union. That's who we're facing this weekend. So that's why I brought on for this week's jersey swap. JP, thank you for joining me in another jersey swap.
No, thank you. You know me, I love always hopping on these. It's always a lot of fun catching up with our friends over in Cincinnati. It's going to be interesting this time around. We'll obviously talk about it, but it's always an honor to be back in Cincy Soccer Talk.
Yeah, and probably we're more brothers in arms more than anything. You beat the Chiefs, man. You know,
I
I
love it.
watched the Super Bowl for the ads and Kendrick Lamar's halftime show, but go Birds,
Hey,
man! You guys
love it.
really pulled it off this time. You guys still celebrating up there?
Yeah, so people definitely are still celebrating. It's ironic because when the Eagles win the Super Bowl, when I guess any Philly sports team wins a championship, all the gas stations they have like the we call them Bobo, but like the knockoff like gear, right? And so like
Right.
they're still hanging around and they're like doing like the 3 for 20 deal, $10 t-shirt. It's so funny, but yeah, it's exciting. We don't see a lot of championship. We don't have a lot of good. You remember 2022 Union, Phillies, Eagles all in their respective championship, and they all lose in heartbreak fashion. And
That's right.
so when these moments happen, you think about this year, you think about 2017, you even think about '08 with the Phillies. You cherish it because you never know when it's going to happen again. But yeah, we're hoping that the Union can follow suit very soon.
Now you know why we celebrated the Shield so badly in 2023. It
I
meant
don't blame you.
something, man. It's worth their weight in gold, silver, whatever metal you use at this time of the year. But I wanted to bring you on. I know you are sort of independiente right now,
That's
but
right.
I wanted to
One
bring
of
you on.
three.
You're always such a great guest with us.
Thank you.
So, and especially this time of the year where things have just got out of the gate, but also, the union's undergone such an overhaul. Ernst Tanner is this is really his team right now.
Oh yeah.
Jim Curtin is out. Bradley Carnell is in, the former Red Bulls interim and St. Louis City head coach. I guess really the elephant in the room. I mean, was this the right move to let Jim Curtin go?
So if you ask me, I think this was the wrong move. I thought that by letting Jim go, it was a scapegoat moment for the Union. Think about this, like 2022, the Union are in MLS Cup final. Everyone's giving all the roses to the Philadelphia Union. And so I think we talked about it here on Cincy Soccer Talk. They never ever replenished that team. People left after the 2022 season and they yet to replenish it. And then last year was just, everything kind of fell apart. And it sucks because Jim is going to be the one that's going to die by the sword. But, El Brujo Martinez leaves midseason. Julian Carranza leaves midseason as well. And so those are huge losses. Those are integral parts of that 2022 team. And so it was, unfortunate. And we know the sport, right? When the team is not performing like they should, the manager's always going to be the first one to fall. I did not agree with the decision. I hated how they kind of handled it as well. But it does look like Ernst has kind of bounced back, and I've talked about this too on my personal platforms. Willing to give Ernst the opportunity here to kind of do right the wrong that he did. I do think he was wrong in letting letting Jim go, but Ernst has been able to build a championship caliber team the last 5 years. All right. And that was without his coach. Remember, Jim was already the manager when he came here, when Ernst came here. So now Ernst is able to pick his manager, right? He's going to be able to pick his team along with that. And this is clearly Ernst's team with all the homegrowns you see on the roster. And so with Bradley Cardinell, it's kind of like a fresh page, and it's more so that Bradley seems to be the yes man, the person who will agree with Ernst Tanner. If that works, we'll see. Obviously, we had something similar with Howie Roseman and the Eagles, and that worked out well. So I'm willing to give Ernst the opportunity, but I do not like the way they handled the Jim Curtin situation.
So perhaps, I mean, we might be in a little bit of agreement. I don't believe this was a panic move by the Philadelphia Union. I believe that they did their due diligence and they found someone who is a good
I agree.
replacement. So what do you see in Carnell that can really work with the Union?
Well, real quick, panic. Yes, you're right, because panic move would have been firing him, like some of the rumors that I heard in the middle of the season. So allowing
Right.
Jim to finish the season out and then being able to evaluate who would be the perfect match for this team. I definitely think that worked out well. Bradley Carnell, what do I think about him? So far, I liked it. Right, like again, it's kind of tough for me to embrace Bradley when I had such a close connection with Jim and I didn't agree with the situation. But so far, Bradley, and you know this too. Like we always talk, we cross sports. In any
Yeah.
sport, you get a new coach, a new manager. It's a fresh voice, it's a fresh face, and typically things start off well. And obviously, what happened in Orlando last Saturday, it was a clear indication that this team definitely responded to that fresh voice. And he's got some fire in him, right? Not like Jim didn't have fire, but he's got like a different type of, like a more of a tame fire as well. So I definitely am happy with what I'm seeing so far from Bradley Carnell. Tactics seem just a tad bit different, which we'll talk about in a second as well. But Bradley, I'll give him a thumbs up so far.
I mean, maybe just to write on that, where do you think Jim Curtin might end up going? Does he maybe bide his
Ooh.
time, see if like a spot like DC United opens up, which I don't know really Philadelphia's opinion about DC, but that might be a little bit of
Ooh.
a,
No, I'm just kidding.
might be a little bit close to home, but where do you see Curtin maybe picking up his anchor and going?
That's a good point. So, a little bit of background. So, Jim was living in the city for a while. He was living within the city confines. His kids are getting older, so they wanted to put him in schooling out in the suburbs. So, they decided to move out there. So, in the midst of him moving out of the city, moving into the suburbs, he then gets let go of the job that he's always wanted, right? Being the coach of his hometown team. So it's interesting because throughout the all season, there was rumors that Jim would be the guy for NYCFC, and obviously they went in a different direction. You bring up DC is a really good point. I do like Troy down there in DC, but obviously, look, I think it's really hard to manage that team the way they seem to always lack direction. That would definitely be an interesting point. I definitely think for right now he's taking it easy. You know, his kids are in that prime age, like I think they're like elementary school, middle school, high school age, and so he's really trying to embrace, seeing his kids grow up. That's people forget like these are human beings. Like Jim is a father, so he wants to see his kids kind of grow up. We made the joke on social media. Jim was actually in New Orleans for the Super Bowl with his son. So he was witnessing the Eagles win a championship with the son. It was a beautiful moment as well. So I definitely think Jim is going to hang back and see what's out there. I wouldn't put it past him to look at some of these regional jobs, these local jobs that aren't too far away from his family. I don't think he'd be looking at any of those West Coast jobs. And as far as Europe goes, I don't know how Europe views him. I don't think that that's out of the realm from Jim Curtin, but I think for right now, he's definitely Jim Curtin, the dad, not Jim Curtin, the manager. But we'll see how that plays out.
Well, that's good. I mean, sometimes you need that type of reset, not a hard reset, but something where you really look back and see what's important in your life,
Exactly.
weigh things out a little bit, and then you make your next move. And frankly, depending on how things go in a lot of these places like DC United, like let's say an RSL, I know you said probably no West Coast, but you take the jobs when you can.
It would be interesting because you bring up RSL. It would be interesting because I know Jim was frustrated with the lack of spending for the team. So RSL obviously ambitious. So maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. If there's a right project where there is ambition, obviously he'd be down for something like that.
And I'd love to see him sort of like be the one in charge of building everything and not necessarily letting like an Ernst Tanner come in and take control of the purse strings.
He deserves it for sure.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at this team that Tanner has managed to pull together. The good thing about this offseason is you pulled in a lot of young talent, not necessarily through the academy, but overseas as well. Bruno Damiani, striker that got pulled in, he's 22, sprightly Uruguayan. Ian Glavinovic as well. Even like Indiana Vasilev, who has been transferred between teams over and over again. He's only 24 years old.
Wild.
You've got a lot of good additions here. I do want to just take a look at Damiani because it seems like he's the heralded name in this bunch. With Carranza getting transferred out, you've got Ty Baribo and obviously the new number, the existing number 9. But how would you like explain or express what Damiani is like?
So I haven't been able to watch any of him. He apparently was in practice here or training here today. From every indication, he's pretty much what you kind of want in a forward, and especially in this league. He's got size, he's got speed. From the short highlights that I've seen, he makes the right moves in the box. So he's got really good instinct. As well in South America, like especially like the Uruguayan leagues, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, it's very physical, it's very fast. So I do like how that will translate here in Philly. And so him being able to make those runs and knowing where to be in the box is really big because like in Orlando, the Orlando match was like the perfect indication. This team loves to cross the ball. That's their bread and butter. So as a forward, you have to be able to be in the right place at the right time, especially in the attack. And so Diamante seems to have that ability there. Now, it's the most expensive DP deal that we've had in our young history, which ironically enough, I'm going to get a little shout out to one of our own here in Philadelphia, Kevin Kincaid from Crossing Broad. He brought this up. Diamante was the most expensive move in Union history, and yet his deal or his value or his salary this year isn't even in the top 100 in the MLS. So that kind of shows
Really?
you where the Union really kind of are. But now this is Ernst, right? Ernst is always trying to find those diamonds in the rough. That's kind of what Ed Brujel was. I mean, you could maybe say the same for Julian Carranza because obviously he was kind of thrown away in the bottom of the toy chest down in Miami. So he knows how to find this talent where people aren't really looking. But I like the Diamante move. I like what I've seen. I like where he comes from. So we're definitely really excited to see what he can do here. It's going to be interesting to see how it fits because obviously you still have Ua, who's in his final year here.
Hmm.
I haven't been really high on Ua. I think Ua does some really good things off the ball. I think Ua is also really good in the press, but we didn't really bring him for that type of stuff. We brought him here to score goals. He was paid as such, and he hasn't really been able to do that. So I think with this Diamante move, I think it may work out well for Ua because I think Diamante with Barribo and having Ua coming off the bench, I think that would be ideal. But obviously, Carnell can always play around, and there is some depth on this team now, which is good.
Yeah, it was also past the 30 threshold. So,
Yeah.
getting some youth in there is not a bad thing.
All
And
right.
perhaps this is his replacement just coming in a little earlier. Looking at some of the other names, do you feel that there are any that really move the needle in terms of making
Yes.
a big change on this team?
Yes. Jovan Lukic. Keep an eye out for him. Love him. Love what I've seen. It's funny because when I was watching the highlights of him, he reminded me of Brujo Martinez with the tenacity. Especially when one of the problems we had last year was the fact that the back line was number one, they were a mess on their own. Like they were a mess for sure, but they weren't getting any help whatsoever. And having it Brujo Martinez, that's why I say it was a big deal because he was always big as that secondary help for the back line. Lukic can do that. And Lukic also has a vision. He made some great passes down against Orlando. He, to me, is one to really look an eye out for. Obviously, you mentioned Vasilev, Indiana Vasilev. I'm excited for him, too, because he's another Swiss Army knife. That's really kind of the MO of this Union midfield. Ernst definitely loves people in the midfield who could play different positions. Every one of these players in the midfield, maybe besides Daniel Gazdak, could play pretty much anywhere in the midfield. That's a big key part there. But the midfield was definitely supplemented. But Jovan Lukic to me was the big one, and I've loved what I've seen so far from him. And he's still really young, like you mentioned before.
Sorry, but I'm still working the kinks out on this video here. But we mentioned the big names that can come and really make a difference, but you also have to look at the big subtractions that took place. I mean, Jack Elliott out the door. He's gone to Chicago. Jack McGlynn, he's gone over to Houston, one of the bigger deals within the United States. Leon Flack is gone. Others could say didn't quite move the needle, but it sounds like Jose Martinez, Brujo Martinez, is the big guy that really wasn't replaced. But you're telling me that really the additions that put in place is you feel like he's finally been replaced.
Yeah, so I definitely feel as if that the midfield is fine. I think what Ernst has been able to do in the offseason was enough for the midfield. And things have changed a little bit in the kind of the shape of the midfield, but having Jovan Lukic and Danley Jean Jacques together, they kind of were your sitting holding sixes against Orlando. So it's curious to see if that's kind of what will be played out. But Bruno Martinez is always big because, like we talked about, he's always another defender out there. But also, too, I mean, he always swings the momentum of the match, man. He always has one of those moments where he's acting like a maniac, the Tasmanian devil, and it kind of changes kind of the drift of the match. But some of those guys that you mentioned, both Jacks, And who's the other one you mentioned? Jack
Leon
was
Flock,
Leon Flock as well.
even like Samuel
Forgot about Leon.
Adderton. I mean, there's a few names that weren't maybe as played as much, but the depth pieces that are sort of out the door as well.
Yeah. So for Jack Elliott, I, the writing was kind of on the wall.
Yeah.
That back line did not play well, and it kind of felt like Les's and Elliott's partnership kind of was coming to an end as well. Once that contract was up for Elliott, the union knew as well they were not going to pay him, and Jack deserved to get paid. So kudos to him. McGlynn is interesting because apparently we were getting offers from Europe for him,
Mhm.
and so out of nowhere, Houston came with a better deal. So that's a no-brainer. It's like 2.5 million with it, and then there's a sell-on clause as well. So I think that was a good piece of business. Also, he did not really fit with the system that we're trying to run as well. I think he fits more in a 4-2-3-1. Defensively, he still lacks there. And then Leon Flock it was such a heartbreaking one because, he scores the goal in the playoffs in 2022. It was one of his best moments, if not his best moment in a union uniform. And he kept dealing with injuries, and it sucked because it really felt like before the injuries, the one part of his game that he needed to improve upon was in the attack. It always felt like he was just a little bit timid. He just wasn't making the right moves, but it felt like he was grasping that, and he was definitely improving upon that. And I do think he wanted to go back to Europe as well with his family. So all the pieces, obviously love them as people, but I think it is in a business, especially in this business is soccer that we're covering. It was the moves that had to be made, unfortunately.
Yeah, he broke our heart in 22 just as much as maybe Yerson Mosquera broke you guys' heart in 23.
Yes.
So I hate to bring up that scar, but I think all scabs get itched at some point, right?
That is true, man. That is true.
But let's talk a little. I mean, you were talking about how McGlynn doesn't fit the current formation. Let's say it sounds to me like you're playing a 4-4-2, maybe with a double six in the middle. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel that that's a good fit for this team?
So far, it looked good. The diamond really didn't look like a diamond per se last match. So, like I mentioned, Danley Jean Jacques and Jovan Lukic were your two holding sixes. Both of them also aren't scared to kind of get into the attack as well. But more so, what I saw though was ahead of them were the two attacking midfielders, Quinn Sullivan and Daniel Gazak, and those guys had all the freedom in the world to do whatever they want, and that was kind of cool to see, to be honest with you, because I mean, under Jim, I really didn't see that kind of freedom of flowing. Obviously, it's one match, but that's kind of the type of stuff we'll see. The press is still there. High press is definitely going to still be there. I definitely saw a good amount of that as well, but just seeing the midfield kind of change up a little bit, I thought was pretty good, and I think it bode well in the attack. So definitely keep an eye out there. Obviously, we'll have some more players available this upcoming match, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But it was definitely cool to see some new tactics, especially with the new manager. Because I really thought once Jim was gone, and the Jim in the past hasn't always really changed. We've seen a 4-2-3-1 in the past. We've seen the Christmas tree in the past. We've even seen like a 3-5-2. But it always goes back to that diamond, that 4-4-2 diamond. And so in this past match, it was 4-2-2-2, and we'll see if it continues like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if FCC brings out the sword formation that they reintroduced back last week, with Kevin Denke up top, Evander, and probably Yuya Kubo behind, sort of like filtering about in the middle. But I mean, the good thing about this is that we're now starting to see the likes of Pavel Buka get
Okay.
a little bit more freedom as well. You're talking about the freedom to roam in this formation. So it should be an interesting, I think, setup between the two teams. Maybe one last question about the roster that we might be seeing. The big name that I think a lot of people are bringing up is Kevin Sullivan. The youngster that's has been getting more playing time as he's getting a little older, and he is not even starting to drive cars, as far as I know. Let alone drink or vote or anything like that. I mean, where do you see his path being? Is he going to be playing more with Philly, or do you think he's bound for Europe?
I definitely think so. I mean, we still have like I think 3 more years with him, or 2 more years with him, and so I definitely we're going to see some more from him. I think for right now, and I always tell this to people, Because like I get it, he's been hyped up as the biggest young American since Freddie Adu. We're talking about like before becoming 18, which is a big deal, especially in this country. We don't really get these really young soccer stars, so I completely get the hype for Kevin Sullivan. But I always remind people is that he is 15 years old. He is still a very young teenager. He's going through life. He's obviously really, really skilled and talented in the sport. I think for right now, what I want to see is him try to find a way to get into this rotation. This club has not had a legitimate backup 10 for Gazdak since Paxton Aronson was here before he left for Germany. I would love to see him kind of grab that role. And the one thing with Bradley Cardinal and Ernst Tanner moving on from Jim Curtin was he wants more kids. This was one thing where Jim and Ernst were bumping heads. Some of these kids, Jim didn't feel were ready. Ernst felt like we don't even know. We haven't seen them in a match. And so Raffagnello and Kevin Sullivan seem to be the two that will battle it out for that backup 10 role. I just don't want to see Gazdak come September, come fall time, and he's gassed and dead, right? So I would like to see some rotation. I want to see if Kevin can kind of, at some point throughout the season, find his way as that backup number 10. Eventually down the line, I think before he goes to Manchester City, I definitely think you will see him at some point in the starting lineup. But for right now, and this is essentially year one. This will be the full year. He came here like 3/4 of the way of the season last year. So at some point, he definitely will be in that starting rotation.
The amazing thing is that he's not even 16, and yet he's already been given a single digit for his uniform. You don't see that. You don't see that for anybody, even like Harry Kane when he came in through Spurs, and he was like way high in the numbers before they gave him a number 10.
Well, dude, do you see like these MLS promotional videos? So they give every star for each MLS club. So and they chose this club. This Union team has Daniel Gazak, has Andre Blake. They chose Kevin Sullivan. That tells you everything right now with this hype of Kevin Sullivan.
Well, let's keep the hype train going. I mean, we've got a big matchup this weekend between FCC and Philadelphia. I know it's early, but considering that both teams looked solid, looked like they were ready for the role, a 4-2 win at Orlando, which is not easy to do, especially against that Orlando team that has been defensively tight in the past.
Huge result, man. Huge result. Obviously, getting the 3 points, Bradley Cardinal's first match, huge. But getting 3 points in February when you don't have to go to Orlando in the middle of summer.
Oh yeah,
that's even better.
that's I wish we had that on our schedule. But I mean, it seemed like really you guys got out into a big lead. We were able to sort of survive what Orlando threw it at the kitchen sink at Andre Blake. 4-2 victory is very good. FCC, their own 1-0 victory against the Red Bull. This is, to me, this is probably the biggest matchup, I think, of the weekend. I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but I'm also saying that very seriously. How do you see this game coming out?
No, I mean you're on to something there because obviously Cincy and Philly win in match day 1, right? But also too, just the kind of the history of the past couple of years kind of adds to it. Now I know Jim is not here, but I'm sure Pat still wants to get that W over the Philadelphia Union. There's been some really entertaining matches between the two as well. It will be the home opener here for the Union. I am curious to see how it will look. Bruno Diamante will be available. Indiana Vasilev will be available. Nathan Harriel will also be available as well. That's going to be big to see him back on that right flank there. But I think that with the crowd behind them and Bradley Cardinal's first match, I think that the Union will come out strong again. And it's funny because down in Orlando, they go down 1-0 and they kept calm and composed. And that's something Bradley Cardinal was kind of, riding home. And so coming home, I definitely think that they will definitely use that crowd to their advantage as they always have. I honestly feel good about this matchup here for the Union in match day 2 against Cincinnati, man.
I feel pretty good about your chances too. I mean, the only thing I think that sort of opens up the possibility of this being, fool's gold, what we saw in week 1 is 24 shots. I know a lot of it is, you're down 4-1. So you just fire everything. All the bullets in the chamber come out, but that's still a lot, I think, on this defense that still
Yeah.
needs to gel after the loss of Elliott.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of new pieces too. Like I mentioned, Lukic in there, and then the surprise was Oluwaseyi Makanya getting the start. I thought Glanovic would be the one who would start out there with Glezis, but he came out in the second half for like the last 30 minutes to kind of close the match out. But I honestly was impressed by Makanya because, like we talked about it before. I didn't have too much hopes for Makanya. Under 22 initiative signing back in 23, and he wasn't proven. But then he gets out there against Orlando, and he held his own, and that was his first match. It wasn't perfect, but he held his own. And young players, you want those type of games because they can build off of that. Frankie Westfield also got his first start, and I think he's around 18 years old as well. So some new faces on that back line. The defense obviously was a big issue there last week, but again, I think that the midfield kind of changing up, especially Lukic and Jean Jacques. Those guys are really tenacious number sixes there. I think that's really, really big, and I think they're going to want to kind of capitalize on their defensive prowess because I think obviously they go down 1-0, but they played really well throughout the match. And having Harriel back is big. I'm assuming he would start. I don't know why you wouldn't start him, but when he's out there, he's one of the best 1v1 defenders, if not the best 1v1 defender that we have on the squad. So that makes it even more difficult there. That's what makes me feel a little more comfortable coming back here into Philly.
And I think, you're talking about Macania in the defensive line. I look at our defensive line and see Gilberto Flores gave a really good performance, sort of holding ground while we're waiting for the likes of Matt Miazga and Nick Hagland to sort of come back and sort of gel up the back line. But he played a heck of a game. Him and Teenage Hadebe just really doing a good job, both sides of Miles Robinson. I think that this defense is surprisingly going to be the strong point of this team, barring any, accidental injuries, freak injuries that we got in San Jose last year.
Right.
I think, to be honest, this might be a kind of a low-scoring game.
For sure.
I really think this might be like a 1-0, a 2-1 victory. I don't think you're going to see 0-0. I don't think either team is devoid of any attack. But I just don't know who's going to get that last goal.
I almost did you guys no favors. Red Bull first match in the midst of CCC, and then you got Philly Union. It's all similar styles of play, especially with the Red Bull and the Union. Jeez Louise.
And then you got Tigres coming up. It's like 1-2 punch, and then you get socked in the gut. It's
not easy.
I don't want to touch gloves this weekend, man. I don't know about this.
And it might happen, man. It's always when it comes to Cincy and Philly, defense is always going to be the number one thing. It's definitely going to be a low score. Has it ever been like a 3-2 match?
It has
I'd
been,
have to look
though.
back.
I mean, you look last year and it was 4-3.
That's right.
Here, and then it was 4-2 you guys in the Leagues Cup.
Yes, Leagues Cup was big for Ty Barribo. That was the one where he really came out, man.
He scored 4 goals on us last year. And you'll take a look at it. I think he scored 16 all last season. The fact that he punched out a quarter of his goals against us, against the team that is supposed to be defensively solid.
Sports book there, Jeff. I want to see what Ty Barribo's number is there.
Well, I looked at that. I'm like, he gave me nightmares last year, man. Going into the last game of the season, I'm surprised we came out with that 2-1 victory in Philadelphia to end things.
It's never easy, man.
Don't want to bring it up, but so I mean, we have our Growler Cup thing. CincinnatiSoccer.com/support. Go in there, become a Patreon member, and pick your games. What's your score? Who wins? What's the score?
Ooh, this one's gonna be tough, man. By the way, new PA system. It was news today here on Union Twitter. We got a new PA system, so you'll be able to hear those dupes even more clear. But I like we talked about it, it's definitely gonna be low scoring. I do think that it will come out to be a draw. I think it'll be a 1-1 draw. I think that Uwa will get the goal here. It's not very like me to say that, but I think Uwa gets the goal. I think Bruno Diamante gets his debut. I think he comes in the second half for 30 minutes. We'll see if he can get on the score sheet. That'd be really cool to see. But this is fun, man. Cincy and Philly, two similar styles of play. It's still going to be a little chippy out there, even if it's match day 2. And the weather, maybe it's funny because we've had really nice weather during the week here. It's been in close to the 60s. And it's probably going to be cold on Saturday night. So
it's going to be breezy as far as I know.
Yeah. But I got a 1-1 draw, man.
I'm going to go I'm going to go 1-1 as well. I think they're going to be trying to save a little bit of their energy. Evander and Denke are nice and reserved for this game, but I think that 1-1 is probably a good judgment.
Yeah, good result for you guys to get 1-1.
Well, let's close things out here, man. It's
So,
always great to have you. I'm looking at it. It's 30 minutes. My meat pie in the oven's about to go off. So let's close things out, man. Where can we find you on social media?
yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you so much for having me back here. So for right now, just running independently. Everything right now is through pretty much TikTok and Instagram. I've been doing the short style recording. Just makes it much easier, get my points out there. So definitely follow me on all platforms. You can find me LEL Parcero, Parcero Philly, and we'll see what's next for me. But one thing for sure, and everyone in Cincinnati will know this for sure. I will not go away from soccer. Soccer talk will never ever end with me. So I always appreciate you having me on, Jeff.
Yeah, I got to tap that logo, man. It's almost tattooed.
Because I know you wanted to talk about it tonight, but
look at this. Pretty sweet. Nice.
I want to give a shout out to the Union because they were able to put my.
There you go. Number 13, though, man. I don't know. I don't know, man. You're
my family's lucky number, man.
You're tap dancing on a landmine there, man. I don't know.
I love it.
But it's great to have you on the show. I'm glad that we can pick your brain about this. Guys, if you guys want to hear more of this, tune into the Jersey Swap. Go to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Go to your podcasts, listen to that, and check us out on all your social media outlets at Cincy Soccer Talk. We're there. Hey, last thing I can say is make sure you keep your kit clean. I almost messed that up. Let's try that again. Keep your kit clean. There goes my meat pie. Check it out. Thanks a lot there, Jake.
Thank you, guys.